Bouncing back from poor performance is one of the most difficult things in a developer's life. It's like here you got the job and you get assigned a task and you have a poor performance. This is like the biggest confidence killer of them all. Like these are like hard moments, and they're just like any failures. I remember when I first started in development, not in development, but when I first started to go get into web development, I went to interview at this company, and I hadn't done any internet development. And so I remember the recruiter said, hey, here's some of the qualifications that they're looking for. And I'm looking at the list of stuff, and I at that time I was doing more desktop type of things, programming for a financial forecasting company. So everything was desktop and a little bit of, taking data, put it in Excel. Anyway, that was my area, and I was a product specialist there, and that product was doing well, but I wanted to get into internet programming because I knew that was the future. But no one would hire you if you don't have any experience. How many experience you have? I'm like, none, but I understand it. At least I thought I did. But I just wanted an opportunity. So the recruiter came to me with this job opportunity to work at this company. It doesn't exist anymore, but at the time it was called Altor. I go in for this interview, and I'm excited about it. I'm like, yeah, okay. I go through the interview, and I'm interviewing with Bob and Vince. I'd like to take this time to say, R.I.P. Bob. This is one of the most important guys in my career. I'm about to tell you why in a few minutes, but I'd like to give a shout out to Bob. I mean, I don't know, between him and Vince, I don't even know if I would even be, in programming and still be able to make a living, because what I was doing before was a dying technology, and everybody was moving towards the internet, and no one wanted to hire me at that time because I wasn't really qualified for anything except desktop development. Anyway, shouts out to Bob, R.I.P. Anyway, I go into this interview, and Bob is here, and Vince is sitting there, and Vince has got this long rock and roll kind of swagger to him, and I'm just like, okay. So we get through the interview, and I knew some programming stuff, but definitely didn't have an understanding of the whole web programming, because the statelessness of the web at that time was kind of, these were things that I realized were, and not then, but they became a challenge for me because it's a different way of thinking. And for those of you who, it's so common to to know web programming now as opposed to building stuff on an app, unless you're doing video games. Anyway, let's not nerd out about that. I walk into this office, I go into the interview. But I kind of sucked. And then I guess Vince sent me off to go do some sort of test. And I kind of understood what I was doing just from programming, but I was like, maybe, and I kind of patched it together. But the truth is, I bombed this interview, right? I go home, the person I was with at the time was like, hey, did you think you get the job? I was like, no, they do a lot of internet programming, and I don't, I've never had an opportunity, but I would love to do it. I get a call a couple of minutes later, hey, you got the job. I'm just like, huh? Kind of look at the phone. I'm like, excuse me, this is Shane. Shane Stirrup. Yeah, I know who you were, but you sure you called the right person back? So it's like, yeah, they decided they're gonna give you a chance. So I just kind of locked in, because I've always been smart enough to know what I didn't know. So I went and bought me some books, and I just locked in for like 3 or 4 days. I'm like, there's no way I'm going to be unprepared for this job. But in reality, you need more time than that to get the nuances of developing on the internet. I couldn't just flop over and just make the change, but I thought I could. But I wanted to be as prepared as possible because I didn't realize what I was walking into. And so I was like, okay, I'm ready. I go in on my first day, and I already know, like, okay, I know more than I knew when I had the interview. But I figure I was gonna have some time, and some mentorship was gonna be occurring here, and it did. But day one on most developers' job is, when your day one job, you really don't do anything. They stick you in a room, you fill out a bunch of forms with your taxes. By the time you're done with all those damn forms, then you're over to sitting at your desk, and everything you need installed is never installed. So now you have to install all of that stuff. This is a common thing. Your computer is never really set up. And maybe 2 times my computer is being set up. And then I start installing like additional tools that I use. So this is day one. I'm usually the easy day, and I'm trying to get to know the team. I don't know any of these guys at the moment. They're going to be some people I know for the rest of my life, apparently. And so I'm sitting there excited about, okay, I'm sure they're going to give me little stuff, because I had an interesting epiphany. When I did the interview and I bombed it, I started reading those books. I realized how much I bombed. I'm like, whoa, I wasn't even close on that one. Wow. And, oh, goodness. Okay. But I didn't fault myself, because, my resume clearly spelled out where most of my experience was. But I get into day one, I'm sitting around, and I think the very next day, because day one is always a breeze at any company. That's kind of like fall asleep day, and I didn't know much about internet programming. But the very next day I walk in and I'm like, okay, they're gonna assign me something little, so I'm like, okay, I did some more studying, I understand a lot more things going on. So Vince calls me, and he's walking by. It's like, hey, Shane, you ready? I was like, yes, sir. Kind of nervous, because I'm looking at the other guys on the team, and Tom and Christopher and Albert, all these other guys, and John, they're working. And they look like they know what they're doing. And I'm like, well, maybe one day I'll know what I'm doing too. So he's like, hey, you can come in this meeting. So, I get up and I walk into the meeting. I sit down, and there's a few account managers there, and they're talking about Wells Fargo, and we're building some sort of recognition site for them, employee recognition type of website. So I'm sitting there while they're doing this whole employee recognition thing, and they start having a conversation. And they start talking about what the site needs to do. And I was like learning, going like, oh, that's interesting. That's interesting. And so they directed all their question at Vince, because at this time Vince is like the genius guru of everything here, right? He's the alpha dog of all the geeks at this point. And so I'm just sitting there observing this, and this is day 2 now. Day 2. So they're having this conversation, and Vince is like, yeah, we can do that. And in my mind, I'm like, yeah, we can. Because I'm feeding off of his confidence. And he goes, yeah, we can get that one done there too, and we can do this. And he used the word we can do this. And I'm sitting there going like, yeah. And I'm under the impression that we really means he's gonna do it, and he's gonna give me like these remedial tasks, and I'll fit in. It's gonna be like like he's gonna give me the baby stuff. Like, hey, I need a text change over here. Got it. I'm on it, Vince. That's what I was thinking. So when the meeting was wrapping up, they said a lot of interesting things in the meeting, and I'm just sitting there ignorant and just like, hey, this stuff sounds really interesting. I don't understand what they're talking about, but it sounds really interesting. And Vince's like, oh, okay. And then as he's wrapping up the meeting, he goes, here, Shane, these are your specs. You! Wait a minute now. Just a few minutes ago, it was like, we can do that. Now it's like, you can get started on this site. And I go, say what now? I still get teased about this day. So I pick up that stuff, but I'm just like mentally defeated at this moment. Like, I'm going to be building an entire site for Wells Fargo, the bank I keep driving by all the time. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. And it was really like, at that point, I had never built a website in my entire life. I've only read about it. I've made baby little changes here and there, but nothing that I would say, hey, I'm a pro, at least not at the time. I walk out the meeting and I was like, man, and I was around the other developers. I was like, man, that was really an important meeting. Somebody should have wrote something down. And Vince was like, you needed to write something down. So, lesson number 1. Anytime they call you, grab a pen and a pad and make notes all the time. This really seems simple, but I really assumed that the meeting wasn't going to be that big. Anyway, and my role in the development of the site wasn't going to be that big. So I take on this challenge and I'm giving updates. And this is the key part that I think I get trapped in, and I've seen other people get trapped in. This might not necessarily be your thing. From my perspective, I was really working hard. But what I was doing was learning as I was going. So I was being fulfilled in my mind, say, that's a lot of work I got got done today. Which is different than where does the project need to be. And so I remember the project was, the time to be done was really there. We had 2 more days or something. It was just a little short timeline. And so I'm sitting down and I was like, I thought I was doing well, but I really, I really wasn't. I mean, because I was learning while I was going, I was just more excited all the stuff I was learning, but the project was making these incremental steps. A lot of things to learn. And it got to this point where Bob, who totally took a chance on me, I don't even know if I'd be in this business still these years, RIP, much respect. He called in on the project and he's like, all right, Shane, where you at? And I was like, oh, here I am, and I'm detailing this, and that. And, it was missing so much stuff. I wasn't even close to wrapping this site up because there was this front end functionality that I was focusing on. Then there was back end stuff, and I was like, oh, I didn't understand that this back end and these administrative forms, it was a lot of things that, was needed for this site to be complete and delivered to our client. Oh, and I felt so bad. And so Bob wrangled myself, another developer named Tom, and Vince, and I totally failed. I totally failed my team. I failed the company, and I felt like a complete failure. And then all these guys jumped in to help, but I'm feeling guilty because here I am working away, but I'm learning every time I write something. And they're like, hey, Tom, did you finish this? Yeah, I'm done with that. Saved. I'm like, what? How did... they were just knocking things out. And it wasn't even their project. It was mine that I had failed totally. And I'm just like, and I remember someone asked, hey, is Shane working? And I was like, yeah, yes, I'm almost done. So we had decided to divide the work up. These two guys, Tom and Vince, clean up their list, and I'm on item number 2. So they then jump in and start working on my list of items, and I just felt so bad. I'm just like, dude, I wasn't even close to being done. And I just remember feeling like, man, maybe I'm way over my head here. And if you knew these developers that I work with, they're jokers, and they will make fun of you. You will develop thick skin in IT. All right, but I had completely bombed. I felt bad, and I sat there. It got to the customer, but there was no way. I realized there was no way that was going to work if they had left me on it. And I realized that my updates weren't even very accurate. Because what I assessed moving the project forward wasn't, I just didn't know how to tackle a website and say, here. I've built tons of apps on desktop, but very little of it needed like administrative forms to function. You kind of built the functionality, you were done, and then I didn't have to worry about CMS. It was, it was just way different. We had our own special CMS. We had levels of approval of recognition. It was very, very deep, and this was stuff that learning how to code wasn't going to help me. Like, my programming skills wasn't the problem. Understanding what the product actually needed to complete it to be done was the issue. Because I could have probably said things a lot earlier about where I actually was. When you get to those situations, and everybody does, those are not necessarily your bad situations. Especially, you get to play that I'm a rookie card at least once. He's a junior developer. But I think what really did it for me was just having this drive of, okay, now I understand, and I won't let that happen to me again. And I really locked in on my studies. It was more important to be competent for what the product is. And so my advice is, this will happen to you. Okay, there's no way around this. But to lighten the load mentally for yourself, try to figure out or ask questions of, what does it take? What all the pieces are, especially if you're in one of those companies where, I've worked at several companies where they assign you the website. And the longer you work there, you end up with 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 sites, 8, 9, 10. You end up with a body of work that all these people have an account with. And then it becomes like a grab for your time. And there's a lot of developers that, and it's, I don't know, I think it's very hard to sustain. Every time I get in one of those companies, those are hard to sustain. That's not the point. But when you get down in the weeds like that, you got to snap out of it. Your objective is, don't think of it as a negative thing. Think of it as, I now know what it takes. And you haven't gotten stupider. You're not some dummy, even though you will be called it by your fellow co-workers. Don't take it personal, shake it off. But just understand that learning how to code and learning how to program does not equal learning how to deliver a client's product, especially for these established companies. They have those executives and those programmers know what it takes to get the finished product. Think of it along those terms. I need to know what it takes to get the finished product. And damn sure take a notepad and a pencil into a meeting. Thank you very much. Like my video if you like it. Subscribe to my YouTube channel. And I'm going to be working on some theme music. I need some theme music. I could sit down and run my mouth about all the screw-ups in my program. We're going to have some more stories here, okay? But my advice is to stay away from these type of issues where you, at least to prevent you from bombing all the way, especially like I did. I mean, I had everybody up till 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. I felt guilty. I would buy them all lunch, but I didn't get paid yet, so. But try to get an understanding from those existing developers. What does it take to have a finished product? Because it's always more work than described. Hey, we need this grade, we need this, we need this, we need this, we need this, and we need that. I was like, oh, okay, I could work on that. Well, your client isn't going to go to your database to put all the configuration stuff. So, these things make normal sense, but when you're trying to prove yourself, you just forget to ask the most important question. Well, what does it take to get a finished product around here? What does the finished product look like? And start writing that crap down. Draw little boxes. That way you could say, hey, this is where I'm at, this is where I'm at, this is why people worked on the, have these agile methods and all that stuff. So this company had not implemented agile methods or Scrum, but it's about tracking your progress. So that's it. Thank you very much.